Hello and welcome to the Bhagavatam. I'm Rohit, and today I have a question for you. Do you think being kind, compassionate, loving is a good thing? A lot of us might feel that way. And yet, you may have experienced that there have been times where you tried to help someone and then you were hated by their loved ones. Or maybe the person themselves didn't want your help. Despite all your efforts, despite your caring, despite your compassion and your empathy and everything else, they didn't want your help. It happens all the time. Not everyone wants our help, support, or compassion. People want to be allowed to find their own way through the challenges of this world. And they have the right to that. While most of the world is absorbed in acquiring selfish gains, accomplishments, and even just trying to survive, those who are kind, loving, and compassionate can't help themselves, and they feel it is their moral duty to be there for others. In this attempt, we've had, some incredible personalities. Christ was crucified for trying to help others. Krishna was defamed and criticized. Buddha was denounced for converting young people to monks. The path of compassion is not an easy one. When you try to be compassionate with yourself, you'll find you have a critical mind to deal with. When you try to be compassionate with others, there's all kinds of obstacles. It's not something that everyone even wants to begin to embark on, and those who do have a tough time staying there. Yet, compassion is the way for spiritual maturity, and it comes naturally to you as you progress on this path. It begins with compassion towards yourself, and as you develop the self-compassion, compassion for others begins to flow naturally as the heart softens and blossoms. In this episode, we're going to learn about the compassion of Narada, the great, highly evolved being Narada, and how he was cursed for taking people onto the path of enlightenment. At the end, we'll see how he received that curse and turned it around into something that was really a gift of grace and began to see it as a blessing. Maybe we can learn a thing or two from Narada. Let's see. So, in the Bhagavatam, as if you've been following along, for a while back in the 4th canto, we talked about King Prithu, great king, and after whom this world was called Prithvi. That's what this entire planet was known to be in the Vedic time. So this great king Prithu, he had a lineage of his sons and so on, one of which was King Prachinabarhi, and we've talked about him also. And this king and his wife had 10 sons. They were known as the Prachetas. And they were ordered by their father to marry and beget children. So essentially the way this works is this, that it's not that God goes about creating everything. God designates people to do the job. They in turn designate other people to do the work, to populate the planet, to create the species, and so on and so forth. I've often wondered how that all worked. Was there a design team out there? Did they have like a design studio? Did they kind of design different species? How did they go about, creating all these fantastic creatures, from dinosaurs to crocodiles to, bugs to human beings, and then perhaps alien beings on other planets? Was there some kind of, design strategy? Did they have beta testing? Did they do any of the kind of things we do in our time today? I don't know. But the Vedas do tell us about some of that process. And while it seems strange to us, there are many who've been finding deeper understanding and reasoning to what they mean in the Vedic literature. All right, so let's jump back in again. So these 10 brothers, the Prachetas, they'd gone to the forest to meditate. They'd received the instruction from their father to populate the universe. Now, it's very interesting in the Vedas when people are given that instruction by some higher authority, Brahma, the creator, or their parent for that matter, they'll go to meditate. Like, we don't go and meditate when we are told to, go have kids. We go have sex. But they would go to meditate. And they'd perhaps perform austerities, and they might spend many years performing those austerities and meditations. You wonder why. What was the whole process about? Was there a need to meditate? Yeah, actually, there's something to it. The idea is they didn't want to bring into this world any kind of creature. They didn't want to, I remember having this experience when, wanting to have a child. He said, I wanted to bring into this world someone who was going to be of value to the world, someone who was going to bring something, who was going to contribute, who was going to add something of value here. Maybe, in the old saying, as I used to think, make the world a better place. I don't know if that quite happens, but anyway, that was sort of the idea. So they would meditate to raise their consciousness, to come to a higher level, so that when they did procreate, they would bring into this world higher evolved beings. I'm not saying that's the only way highly evolved beings come to the planet, but that is a more surefire way of doing that, because the being that will be attracted to you will be attracted on the basis of your consciousness. All right, so these 10 brothers went to the forest to meditate. There they met with Shiva, and we've gone over all this, but I'm just kind of doing a little recap for you. And Shiva instructed them about the absolute truth. Shiva came out of his meditations, he's in trance usually, and he came to instruct them about the absolute truth, and he gave them specific mantras with which to satisfy the Supreme Godhead, Vishnu. Now, the 10 brothers, the Prachetas, spent thousands of years, it says 10,000 years, in austerity and meditation. It's inconceivable for us. We couldn't spend 10 minutes, but forget 10 years and forget 10,000 years. And people lived for greater duration of life at that time. Also, those who engaged in these kind of practices, time somehow moved into a different dimension for them. So just take it with a pinch of salt. I don't think we need to look at it from our present day context. So as they emerged from their austerities and meditation, from the waters of the ocean, they'd been meditating inside the ocean. Like they'd been completely in deep trance there. And then at that point, just like how people meditate without needing food or air, or just living on air, in the case of breatharians, they were able to live within the water. Now, as they emerged from the waters, the Supreme Being approached them in a very pleasing form to bless them. He said that he wanted them to marry this particular woman, Marisa, from whom they would have a wonderful son who would be no less than Brahma and whose progeny would fill the universe. So this was a time when the universe was beginning to be populated. This is before the overpopulation that has taken place in present time. Then Vishnu disappeared. As the Prachetas emerged from their underwater meditation, which had lasted many, many years, they saw that the world was overgrown with trees that covered the entire surface of the planet. Huge, tall trees everywhere. They desired to eradicate all the trees by burning them with wind and fire from their mouths, just like Shiva at the time of the devastation of the universe. And as they started to create this devastation, Soma, the demigod in charge of the trees and the moon, pleaded with them, saying the trees were also their citizens, and it was their duty as the princes to protect their subjects, including humans, animals, and trees. So there's something really valuable for us to learn here. But those who are in charge of kingdoms, of people, politicians, rulers, it's not just their job to be able to run a government and get elected, but it's their job to be able to serve humanity and animals and the trees and nature. It's not just their job to be able to be popular and get voted as we do in today's time. So Soma is explaining this. He says the Supreme Godhead, the all-pervading, indestructible master of all living entities, had created these trees as part of a wondrous ecosystem. You see here the prachetas. This is from an ancient drawing, or painting rather. And they're destroying all the trees here. So Soma says, by nature's arrangement, fruits, flowers, insects, and animals feed on each other. How can you burn to ashes these trees which are needed for the maintenance of your subjects and descendants? And then he makes a very valuable point. He says, unnecessary anger is contrary to your duty, is contrary to life, and therefore I request you to control your anger. So this is one of the big challenges we all face, is that when we want something and we don't get it, we become frustrated, and very often our frustration turns to anger. And there are times we have something and we lose it, and then again we get angry. And then there are times when things don't go the way we think they should be, and then again we get angry. But we don't examine, or very rarely do we examine, that is the world here at our beck and call, and that things and people and situations are supposed to conform to our idea of how they should be and what they should do? Are our partners expected to do that? Are our children supposed to do that? Are our employees all going to do what we want? Sometimes. Very often they have a mind of their own, as you'll find out over time. Soma continues, as the father and mother are the friends and maintainers of their children, as the eyelid is the protector of the eye, as the husband is the maintainer and protector of a woman. Again, given the classic family model, for those of you that might be on a different model, as the householder is the maintainer and the protector of the poor, and as the learned is the friend of the ignorant, so the king is the protector and giver of life to all his subjects. The trees are also subjects of the king, therefore they should be given protection. The Supreme Godhead is situated as Paramatma or Supersoul in the heart of all living entities, whether moving or non-moving, including men, birds, animal, trees, and indeed all living entities. Therefore, you should consider every body a residence or temple of God. By such vision, you will satisfy the Supreme Being. Have you ever wondered what would happen if you would have that vision? What if you were to actually view all creatures, all beings, all people as being the residence or temple of God? That when you insult them or when you think badly of them, you're thinking badly of that which created them. It's like if an artist has a painting and I criticize that painting, then I'm criticizing the artist. If I'm criticizing a human being, if I'm criticizing an animal, if I'm looking unkindly at it, then I'm looking unkindly at the Creator, or God. But by seeing them all as expressions of God, we truly satisfy the Supreme Being. Try and understand this vision of equanimity, this vision of samadrishti, means seeing all as the same. That vision is very powerful. That vision is a vision of divinity. When we can see that everything is the energy of God, that whether it's a stone or it's gold, it's an expression of God. Whether it's an animal or a human, they all have God present in them. And it behooves us to treat them with dignity, with respect, with love. So Soma says, one who inquires into self-realization and thus subdues this powerful anger, which awakens suddenly in the body as if falling from the sky, transcends the influence of the modes of material nature. So to transcend your anger is to transcend the world. What a powerful thought. Really be with this today. To transcend anger is to transcend the world. How does that happen? How do we transcend anger? So Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, From lust, anger arises. By lust, he doesn't mean just sexual lust. He means the lust meaning the desire. From desire, anger arises. Why? Because when our desires are not met, we get angry. Back to the same thing that I was talking of earlier. When that which we desired is taken away from us, even if we've got it, now it's taken away from us, we get angry. Right? If somebody else walks away with your partner, your beloved, if somebody else steals your property, you're angry, you're hurt, you're upset, you're devastated. Those are all expressions of that anger. Different manifestations of that feeling that this is mine. But if I let go that feeling that something is mine, if I let go the idea that I control anything, then what happens? When I understand that everything belongs to God, every being, every person, my child, my partner, everything, and it comes into my life for a certain amount of time, and that time might be a few minutes, and that time might be a few years, and that time might be a lifetime. But for however long it comes, I need to honor that person or that thing or that animal and treat them as if God was in my presence, with the utmost of respect and the utmost of humility. Then imagine how we would live our lives. Imagine the quality of our existence. And that's what we're being invited to here, and that's what he's telling him. Soma then says they then gave the Prachetas, so Soma and the others gave the Prachetas Marisa, the daughter of Pramloka Apsara. So there was an Apsara. And Apsaras are known to be dancing women from the heavenly planets. The dancers. And she had an affair with a particular sage. And they'd had a child called Marisa. She had gone back into those heavenly planets, and the child had been raised by the trees and by Soma, the demigod Soma, who had poured nectar into her mouth, and he had sustained her when she was abandoned, and that she'd been raised in that natural environment in the forest. So now Soma was handing over Marisa to the Prachetas, and she was going to bear children with them that would in turn populate the earth. This was the beginning. So she bore for them a son named Daksha, who filled the world with living entities. With his mind, Daksha first created all kinds of... So he had a very powerful Daksha. Daksha was incredibly powerful. He meditated and he created all kinds of things. He brought into manifestation demigods, demons, human beings, birds, beasts, aquatics, and so on. When he saw the defects of his creation, however, he went to the mountains to perform austerities and rituals to appease God, to Hari. And he said, what am I doing wrong? Why am I not doing this right? So, the fact is that there have been so many different attempts at creation, so many different kinds of species, so many different beings who have been entrusted those powers. We have very limited power. We might be able to have one, baby or two or three or 5, 10 in some cases, but yeah, in some of these beings in other planets and other alien beings, they were able to do far more than that and create far more than that. So when Daksha was very disturbed, he offered these prayers to Vishnu. They're called the Hamsaguya prayers. And he says, the Supreme Lord is beyond the creation of this material world, for he is the source of the material qualities and creation, as the cause of all causes. So this is a very important phrase, cause of all causes. It says in the Brahma Samhita, Ishvara Parama Krishna Sachit Ananda Vigraha Anadir Adir Govinda Sarva Karana Karanam. Sarva Karana Karanam. Karan means cause. Sarva means all. So the cause of all causes. What is the original cause of everything? That is God. Ishvara means the supreme controller. we are trying to become the controllers in this world, but the supreme controller is God, who is controls everything. Not personally, again, through his agents. Ishvara Parama Krishna. He is the Paramishwar, the supreme controller. Who is that? Krishna. Ishvara Parama Krishna. Sat Chit Ananda Vigraha. He has a form that is eternal, full of knowledge and full of bliss. Sat Chit Ananda, that is fully conscious. Anadir, he is the beginningless. Adir, he is the original. Govinda. Govinda is another name for Krishna. Sarva, yeah. So I wish to offer my respectful obeisances to him. The Supreme Brahman, Krishna, is the ultimate resting place and source of everything. Everything is done by him, everything belongs to him, and everything is offered to him. He is the ultimate doer. That's a very interesting statement. He's the ultimate doer. What do you mean? God does everything? So we're just puppets? No. He sets up the infrastructure, and now we do. Okay? But the ultimate doer, just like you say, when something happens in a army, then the general is the ultimate person responsible, or a CEO of a company or the president of a country. They're the ultimate responsible person, right, for whatever is done. They take full responsibility. So, although we are the ones who do, the ultimate doer behind all our doing is God. He is the one that gives us the Shakti, the power to do things. If we don't have the power, then we cannot even stand up. We cannot even open our eyes. We cannot even breathe. That Shakti, that power is given by God. Like, think about it. How does this lump of matter, bones, blood, skin, hair, how does it get up? How does it stand? How does it get balanced on 2 feet? How is it able to do all this? I mean, it should not be possible, and yet it is. How is this organism able to think for itself, make different choices? How did that happen? This is where we have to open up our minds to different possibilities and the possibility of God. So here he says, there are many causes in the world, but he is the cause of all causes. He is one without a second and has no other cause. I therefore offer my respects unto him. The Supreme Godhead, who is inconceivably opulent, meaning who owns everything. Everything belongs to him. Who is devoid of all material names, forms, and pastimes. Who is devoid of all material names, forms, and pastimes. So he has spiritual names. And who is all-pervading, is especially merciful to the devotees who worship his lotus feet. Thus he exhibits transcendental forms, names, with his different pastimes. May that Supreme Godhead, whose form is eternal and full of knowledge and bliss, be merciful to me. So somewhere some of you might wonder, why is God male? Actually, that's the presentation on the surface at the beginning level. As you go deeper, you begin to understand that the feminine aspect of God, known as Radha, is even beyond him. And that is a very intimate topic. And that topic is not taken up by Shukadev in this Bhagavatam. That is an advanced topic. To understand that, one must first go through the Bhagavatam, understand it deeply, understand that the masculine side of God is being talked about all the time, until you can enter into the heart of God, until you can enter into the essence of God. And once you've entered there, then you'll get to know about the feminine aspect. That feminine aspect which he worships, which he adores, and which to him, or rather without which he is nothing, no one. He that is the cause of all causes is nothing without Radha. Just a little glimpse for you. And we will someday take up that topic as well. So hearing these wonderful prayers, Vishnu now appeared before Daksh, standing on his carrier Garuda. And that's what the vision of seeing Vishnu looks like. He appeared with 8 long, mighty, very beautiful arms. In his hands he held a different weapon, all different weapons, all brilliantly shining. His garments were yellow and his bodily hue deep bluish. His eyes and face were very cheerful, and from his neck and his feet hung a long garland of flowers. His chest was decorated with the Kaustuba jewel, and on his head was a gorgeous round helmet, and his ears were decorated with earrings resembling sharks. All these ornaments were uncommonly beautiful. He was accompanied by the great sage Narada, Indra, the king of the demigods, and many residents of the higher planetary systems. Daksh, who is the one meditating and who had now called forth this vision, Daksh was at first afraid and then pleased. He fell to the ground to offer his respects. All his senses were filled with pleasure because of this highly elevated happiness. Daksh could not say anything at first. Vishnu, who knows everyone's heart, said, "O most fortunate king, because of your great faith in me, you have attained the supreme devotional ecstasy." Notice that word. Because that's what happens. You know, the pleasure we look for in this world, that's momentary. You might feel it for a few moments and then it's gone. But the ecstasy of devotion, of surrender, of love of God is the supreme ecstasy of all. We were talking about the feminine aspect of God, Radha. She is known to be the Haladini Shakti, which is the pleasure potency, that which gives pleasure to the divine, as nothing else does. So Vishnu continues, "Indeed, because of your austerities combined with exalted devotion, your life is now successful. You have achieved complete perfection. You have performed extreme austerities for the welfare and growth of the world. My desire also is that everyone within this world be happy. I am therefore very pleased with you, because you are endeavoring to fulfill my desire for the welfare of the entire world." Brahma created 9 personalities, including you, to help him in the functions of creation. I now offer you Akshini, the daughter of Prajapati Panchajanya, as your wife. Together you will beget hundreds and thousands of children. After speaking this, the creator of the entire universe, the supreme Godhead, Hari or Vishnu, also Narayan, he's got so many names, immediately disappeared, as if he were an object experienced in a dream. Just to show you some of the paintings that were there in the, this is from the Philadelphia Museum of Art. And this shows the Prachetas and they're receiving their wife. This is another painting, Brahma, handing them Asikni, sorry. All right. And yeah, here we go. So now we come to a slightly further part where I was telling you about compassion and all that. And we're going to be talking about Narada. This is the sage Narada. Sorry, some little glitches out here. So the sons of Daksha were all very gentle. So now we're moving on with the story. The sons of Daksha were all very gentle and obedient to the orders of their father. See, he'd had this moment of enlightenment. He'd had this vision of God. And now he went on to create progeny for the world. He wanted to, populate the universe. So his sons, who he was going to count on for this purpose, he ordered them to beget children, and they went to a place of pilgrimage again and performed austerities to fulfill his desires. The great sage Narada, seeing the boys engaged in spiritual practices, so we showed you a picture of Narada just a moment ago, approached them and said, "Dear boys, you have not seen the extremities of the earth. There is a kingdom where only one person lives, and where there is a hole from which, having entered, no one emerges." This is, by the way, you're going to be hearing something very bewildering, so please be patient. It is explained as we go further. So he says, you have not seen the extremities of the earth. He's telling them that they're very immature. There is a kingdom where only one man lives, and where there is a hole from which, having entered, no one emerges. A woman there who is extremely unchaste adorns herself with various attractive dresses, and the man who lives there is her husband. In that kingdom, there is a river flowing in both directions, a wonderful home made of 25 materials, a swan that vibrates various sounds, and an automatically revolving object made of sharp razors and thunderbolts. You have not seen all this, and therefore you are inexperienced boys without advanced knowledge. How will you create progeny? So Narada is a very wise spiritual master. Okay, he is the son of Brahma, and he has come to enlighten these kids who've gone to meditate and who've been given the task of creating progeny for their father, for the universe. So the deep significance of this allegory is as follows. The material body, which is a result of the living entity's actions, okay? The material body, which is a result of the living being's actions, is his field of activities. So this is your field of activities, your field of karma. Okay, karma means action. So this is the organism, the field that you operate in to act. How you act is going to be determined by what you do with this body. And that means this body and mind, gives him false designations. So we think of ourselves with these false designations such as male, female, smart, stupid, fat, thin, ugly, beautiful, whatever, right? We give ourselves all these designations, but these are all egoic designations. They are not who we really are as a soul, because that's who we are. We're inhabiting this body. You cannot identify a person, rather designate a person based on their car. And of course, yet we do. If someone's driving a very fancy, big, beautiful car, a Ferrari or a Rolls Royce or something, we think of them one way. And if they're driving, an ordinary Toyota or a Honda, or even something broken down and old, well, then we think of them a different way. We designate a person, or we think of that person based upon their car, and like the same way we do with our body and our activities. So to understand this allegory, we need to understand that this material body, which is the field of actions, field of our activities, is also been given many false designations by ourselves and by others. Since time immemorial, the living entity has received various types of material bodies, which are the roots of bondage to the world. So in that body, they've engaged in karma. That karma then binds you to the world, either good karma or bad karma. All of it binds you to the world. If one foolishly engages in temporary karmic activities and does not look toward the cessation of this bondage, what will be the benefit of his actions? When he said there is only one male, he meant there is only one enjoyer, and that is God, who observes everything, everywhere, is full of 6 opulences, and fully independent of everyone else. He is always transcendental to this material creation and unaffected by it. If the members of human society do not understand him, but simply work very hard all day and night for temporary happiness, what will be the benefit of such activities? A bill is a hole from which, having entered, one does not return. So that's the word in Sanskrit, bill. B-I-L-A, not B-I-L-L, is a hole from which, having entered, one does not return. One who enters the lower planetary system called Patal rarely returns. Also, one who engages in very sinful activities, like really harmful activities, it often, like a whirlpool, sucks you in, and there is no coming back from that. Very rarely does a person actually reform themselves if they've been caught up in very heinous activities, especially, let's say, a psychopath or sociopath, or someone who's really gone deep down the dark hole. That's what it's talking about here. But conversely, if one enters the spiritual universe known as Vaikuntha, he does not return to this material world either. There is the opposite of that as well. If there is such a place from which, having gone, one does not return to this miserable material condition of life, what is the use of jumping like monkeys in the temporary material world and not seeing or understanding that place from which one goes and never returns to this material world? Krishna says it in the Gita. He says, upon attaining that place, my abode, one never returns to this temporary and miserable world. He says, what is the profit of struggling so hard? The prostitute Narada spoke about is the unsteady intelligence of the living entity, which is like a prostitute who changes dresses just to attract one's attention. See how your mind is constantly doing that? Constantly putting on different acts to grab your attention. And now, of course, you have social media and everything else that helps it out. But otherwise, the mind is constantly distracted. And if one fully engages in temporary karmic activities, not understanding the purpose of life, what does he actually gain? If one becomes the husband of a prostitute, meaning the mind, as in you get married to your mind, you identify with your mind, you think that your mind is you, he loses all independence. Similarly, if a living entity has polluted intelligence, he prolongs his materialistic life. Frustrated by material nature, he must follow the movements of the intelligence, which brings various conditions of happiness and distress. If one performs karmic activities under such conditions, what will be the benefit? The river flowing in two directions refers to material nature, which functions in two ways, by creation and dissolution. Everything that is created is destroyed. Everything that you have will eventually be lost. There is no permanence in this world. Thus, the river of material nature flows both ways. A living entity who unknowingly falls in this river is submerged in its waves. And since the current is swifter near the banks of the river, he is unable to get out. See, when you try to get out of this world, it's even more difficult. The challenges become even greater. Like the water flowing on the edges of a river is faster, and you're unable to get out. What will be the benefit of performing activities in the river of Maya? The house made of 25 elements refers to the Supreme Lord, who is the source, the cause, and effect of all that is manifest in this world. If one engages in temporary karmic activities, not knowing that Supreme Person, what benefit will one derive? Narada then spoke about a swan. A swan knows how to separate milk from water. The Supreme Lord is the source of all material and spiritual energy. One who knows how to discriminate between matter and spirit, who accepts that the essence of everything is spirit, and who knows the cause of bondage and the means of liberation, is like the swan. If, however, one rejects the Vedas to engage in temporary activities, what will be the result? See, when they're talking about the swan, they're talking about being able to differentiate between what is matter and what is spirit. And knowing that even within matter is spirit. When you can see within matter lies spirit, then you really see. Just like when you see God within every being, as we talked of earlier, that is spiritual vision. And to see spirit within matter, that is spiritual vision. To understand that there is nothing but God and that everything is God, including you. But it doesn't mean you are God. It doesn't mean you are the source of everything. You are simply an expression of that, a particle of that. Then yes, like a wave, we are like that wave in an ocean. We're there for a bit, and then we go back into the ocean. And then we come up again as a wave, and then again go back into the ocean. Narada spoke of a physical object made of sharp blades and thunderbolts. This refers to eternal time, which moves very sharply, as if made of razors and thunderbolts. Uninterrupted and fully independent, time drives the activities of the entire world. If one does not try to study the eternal element of time, what benefit can he derive from temporary material activities? The same thing Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita. He says, time I am. This very quote was actually stated by Oppenheimer, where he said, time I am, destroyer of worlds, and I have come. So, Kala Asmi. Kala is time. Kala Asmi. I am time. That's what Krishna is saying in the Bhagavad Gita. Narada also asked how one could ignorantly defy one's own father. By this he meant that one must accept the original instructions of the Vedas, the Shastra, which is our real father. The Vedas instruct us that one should end this material way of life. If one does not understand this instruction, then he is ignorant. The words of a material father who endeavors to engage his son or daughter in material activities are not the real instructions of the father. See, the idea is that the father is symbolic for the guide, and trying to guide you to help you gain liberation. It's not just that, father and mother is just not to give you birth and then have you get on the karmic bandwagon, but really to give you the path of liberation. That is the purpose of every parent. But he says the real parent is the Vedas, because it is the guidebook, it is the instruction on how to get out of this world. And if the parents align themselves with that wisdom and that knowledge and give it to their children, then they are actually doing the job or the function of what a parent should be doing, helping their child get liberation from the cycle of birth and death. After hearing these instructions, the sons of Daksha were firmly convinced. They accepted Narada as their guru and followed the path by which one never returns to this world. Now, after delivering the sons of Daksh, Narada continued traveling through the different planetary systems. He is constantly traveling everywhere. He travels throughout the universe, wherever he feels like going. You may say, "Oh, this is not possible." The truth is, even small little human beings like you and I have learned things like astral travel. It works. You can actually be somewhere while your body is somewhere else. You can literally be visiting another city, another town. I don't recommend doing that because you're leaving behind this body and something may decide to take it over. It is possible. It has happened. I don't recommend it, but it is possible, just so you know. And just likewise, Narada, who is a highly evolved being, is able to travel across universes. So, he continued his travels throughout the planetary systems, his mind always fixed on the lotus feet of the Supreme Being. When Narada told Daksh the news, now he goes to Daksh, he's like a troublemaker, Narada. And he goes to Daksh and he tells him the news, and his father laments the loss of his sons, and then Brahma, Narada's father, comes in, pacifies Daksh and says, "It's all right, you'll have more sons, don't worry about it." All right, Daksh is finally convinced, and he chills out and he says, okay. And those sons now grow up, and he wants them to perform austerities like their brothers and, have children. And for many months, these sons, they drank only water, ate only air. They cleansed all their material desires from their heart through the austerities and chanting of mantras like Om. Once again, the sage Narada approaches them. And they too renounced the world and followed in the footsteps of their brothers. Now, the question you've got to ask yourself is this: was Narada doing something bad by enlightening these boys? Or was he actually doing something for their welfare? It depends on how you look at things. If you look at it from the eyes of Daksh, wasn't doing a good thing. And if you look at it from the view of the higher energy of enlightenment, of liberation, of God, Narada was doing the most important thing anyone can do for anyone. So anyways, Daksh became very angry at Narada. He said to Narada, "You wear the dress of a saintly person, but you are not actually a saint. Indeed, although I am a householder, I am a saintly person. By showing my sons the path of renunciation, you have done me an abominable injustice. My sons were not at all freed from their debts." So they're considered to be three debts: the debt you have to your parents, the debt you have to the demigods, and the debt you have to saintly persons. They were not freed from their debts, he says. That's why Brahmins wear a thread where they have the three threads on their jano, as it's called. Those are to symbolize these three debts. And so he says, O personality, he calls Narad, O personality of sinful action, you have obstructed their progress toward good fortune in this world and the next, because they are still indebted. So in other words, if they're still indebted, they can't be liberated, and they're absolutely going to have to keep coming back here, and you've just interrupted the flow of their... See, the whole thinking of someone like Daksh is, you've got to do good deeds, you've got to do good karma, you got to elevate yourself, and gradually, you'll come somewhere down the line to liberation, and, you'll come to that place. But it's a very different way of thinking. Narad's like, hey, let's just cut to the chase. Let's get to the heart of things. Let's just, we don't need to linger on out here. So Daksh continues in his raving, mad anger. He says, you have committed violence against other living entities, and yet you claim to be an associate of God, of Vishnu. In reality, you are defaming the Supreme Being. You needlessly created a mentality of renunciation in innocent boys, and therefore you are shameless and devoid of all compassion. I'd heard a story very similarly about Buddha, where he was sitting with a bunch of his disciples, and all of them were, of course, monks. They'd renounced, the young fellows. And a guy comes along and sees Buddha sitting with all his disciples, and he starts abusing Buddha. He says, you're such a horrible person, you're a rascal, you're taking all these young men away from their families, and you're not, they're no longer getting married, and you're taking them away from jobs, and you're not letting them be productive, and you're turning them into useless people who are going to be monks and doing what? Useless stuff. For an hour he keeps abusing Buddha. After an hour of all that abusing, this man gets tired and he goes away. At which point Buddha's disciple, his chief disciple Ananda, comes up to him and says, Master, how is it that you are not disturbed by the abuses of this man? And Buddha says, very succinctly, he says, when someone gives you a gift and you do not take it, then who does the gift belong to? Think about it. When someone gives you a gift and you do not take it, then who does the gift belong to? Right? To the person themselves. You haven't taken the abuse, so you haven't owned it. You haven't held on to it. And that is just a powerful way of learning to deal with someone who is trying to insult you or abuse you. Anyway, Daksh continues, although you wear the dress of a devotee, you create enmity with people who are not your enemies, or you break friendship and create enmity between friends. Are you not ashamed of posing as a devotee of God while performing these abominable actions? Unless full knowledge is awakened, simply changing dresses as you have done cannot possibly bring detachment from the material world. Material enjoyment is indeed the cause of all unhappiness, but one cannot give it up unless one has personally experienced how much suffering it is. Therefore, one should not be allowed to remain in so-called material enjoyment while simultaneously advancing in knowledge. One should be allowed to remain in so-called material enjoyment while simultaneously advancing in knowledge to experience the misery of this false material happiness. Then, without help from others, one will find material enjoyment detestful. So you're understanding Daksha's way now. Be in the path of material enjoyment, experience the suffering that it causes, and then naturally detachment will occur. What Narada had done was, through knowledge, through wisdom, he had brought about detachment in the sons of Daksh. Daksh continues, those whose minds are changed by others do not become as renounced as those who have personal experience. So you can see here, they both have valid points. However, Daksh is angry. So now he goes further. You have given me great displeasure by misguiding my sons for no reason to the path of renunciation. This cannot be tolerated once, and now you have done the same inauspicious thing again. Therefore, you are a rascal who does not know how to behave towards others. You may travel all over the universe, but I curse you to have no residence anywhere. Shukdev Goswami, who is narrating this whole thing to the king, he says, my dear king, since Narad Muni is a saintly person, when cursed by Daksh, he replied, Yes, what you have said is good. I accept this curse. He could have cursed Daksha in return, but because he is a tolerant and merciful, saintly person, he took no action. Narada, as a result, is constantly traveling. He never stays in one place for any length of time. So that, my friends, is the lesson for today. It is the lesson of what a compassionate person like Narad, who was trying to help others on the path of enlightenment, and how such persons are often misunderstood. And because they're misunderstood, we sometimes get mad at them. And we think they're taking away people from society. As many people criticized even Prabhupada for taking young men and women away from their families and society and bringing them into this path of spiritual development. The same happened with many other gurus and teachers. But that's ultimately the way. Christ taught the same way. It was not that this is a new path. Buddha taught the same way. It is the path that when you come across a spiritual master, you come across a guru, you come across someone who accelerates your progress and who helps you get out of this world, that is the greatest blessing of all. So I'd love to know your thoughts, your questions. Let's open things up. Let's see what you've got. And let's pull up your comments. What have you got? Any thoughts? Any comments? What's on your mind? Is everyone just speechless today? Some of you prefer to type out your questions, or would you like to just come in on the, if you want to come in on the chat, those of you who are on Zoom, just raise your hand and I'll bring you in. But no pressure. If you feel satisfied or you feel you need to contemplate, that's fine too. I want to take this opportunity to thank all of you for being here and how much your presence means to this program and to me and to support all of the work that we're trying to do here. All right. Seely asks, is the Atma the spiritual aspect within all matter? And is there a correlation to Vishnu or an aspect of the Supreme Being? Would this be similar to the greatness of a single seed that holds all its species? Is the Atma the spiritual aspect within all matter? So Atma or Atman refers to the tiny infinitesimal particle of life that we are. Brahman, Brahman, refers to the energy of the universe. So that spiritual essence or aspect that is within all matter, that is Brahman, Brahman, Brahman. Krishna says in the Gita, Brahmano hi pratishta aham. I am that Brahman. That being who appeared as Krishna says he is the origin of Brahman, the energy of the universe. That energy is all-pervading, all-pervasive. It is in every atom of the creation, whether it's in this planet or whether it's in any other planet. So that energy is everywhere. Just like the sun rays come from the sun and go everywhere. In the same way, Brahman is everywhere. But behind the sun rays, there is the sun planet. And behind the sun planet, well, I don't know, according to the Vedas, there are beings who are in charge of even the sun, who take care of the sun. So let's go back over your question. Is the Atma the spiritual aspect of all that matter? And is there a correlation to Vishnu or an aspect of the Supreme Being? Would this be similar to the greatness of a single seed that holds all its species? I'm not sure what you mean by this last statement. Oh yeah, of course. Yes. The DNA, the seed, holds within it all the species that will originate from there. Each seed holds the secret to all the other seeds that will emanate. Because from the seed will come the plant, from the plant will come more seeds, and those seeds in turn will continue to replicate as the original seed. And so in the same way, the DNA of God is present within all of us. The DNA of God, the nature of God, the true essence of God is present in all of us. And the more we understand that that's who we are, and not this concoction which was made up by our mind and made up by our society and made up by the world and this body, the more we peel off the layers of illusion, the more we come to the essence of who we are. And in moments of stillness, you've all felt it. In moments of peace, you've all felt it. You felt that essence. It felt so beautiful, so uplifting. That was you. That was that particle of the divine being awakened in that moment. That was you coming to life. And if you want to be in that place all the time, then it requires tremendous devotion to get there. Anything worth having requires devotion. Whether it's a business you're developing, a relationship you want to create in this world, whether you want to raise a child, or whether it is that you want to find God. Whatever it is, requires devotion. There is no path greater than the path of devotion. Only because you'll see from the results. Right? You're devoted to your business, you're devoted to your family, you're devoted to your relationship. You will make great progress in making it something amazing. If you're not devoted to it, it won't go anywhere. If you're just kind of doing it casually, by the way, sort of. So most people treat their spirituality that way. It's sort of this casual pursuit. They say it's the big deal. It's a big part of their life. But, you got to, what are your actions? Where are your thoughts? What are your deeds? What's take a look at that. How much of your time is actually spent in that spiritual pursuit? And then you'll know. Like a person could say, my family is the most important thing for me, but they don't have any time for their family. They're just so busy with everything else, their job and friends and this and that. They're never there for their kids. So you can say, my family is the most important thing, but it doesn't matter what you say. It's what you do. It's where your actions are. Thank you. Thank you all for being here. And if there's no further questions, I look forward to seeing you next week. Hare Krishna. Jai Krishna. Good night.